Saturday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Saturday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Saturday. Saturday, bring it on.
To stay up to date on all the news that you need to know, there's no better place than right here on the DSR Network. And there's no better way to enjoy the DSR Network than by becoming a member. Members enjoy an ad-free listening experience, access to our Discord community, exclusive content, early episode access, and more. Use code DSR26 for a 25% off discount on sign-up at thedsrnetwork.com. That's code DSR26 at thedsrnetwork.com/buy. Thank you, and enjoy the show.
This is the Daily Blast from the New Republic, produced and presented by the DSR Network. I'm your host, Greg Sargent. This week, the New York Times confirmed the latest revelations in the Jeffrey Epstein scandal, reporting on the missing files that appear to involve charges against Donald Trump himself. The Times is treating this as a blockbuster story and added some more nuance in a harsh turn in the saga for Trump. MAGA is all over the place on this. Fox News has mostly ignored the revelations, and one big MAGA influencer is hyping Hillary Clinton's supposed role in the scandal, but that's backfiring. Other MAGA types remain deeply split. This is really a crack-up moment for MAGA that raises questions about the movement's future. And we're talking about all this with writer Anna Marie Cox, who has written well for the New Republic about Epstein and right-wing elites. Anna, nice to have you on.
It's good to be on.
So the Times confirmed the big story of the week. It's that the Epstein files, which are the documents related to federal investigations into Epstein's pedophilia and sex trafficking, are missing many pages that appear to involve charges by a woman that alleged Trump assaulted her as a teenager in the 1980s. The Times described the assault this woman alleges as a, quote, violent and lurid encounter, adding, more than 50 pages of investigative materials related to her claims are not in the publicly available files. Anna, that's rough stuff, and the Times treating this as a big story means the media hunt will really intensify now. What do you think of this?
Unfortunately, we can't expect people in MAGA world or Trump supporters to even consume the New York Times, right? They don't trust it. For some people in MAGA, that will mean it's proof it's not true. However, the Times is still the leader for all American media, for better or worse, one might say. For them to take it that seriously, to put it on the front page, and they have the goods, right? This was reported before, but the Times has gone very deep on it, and they have treated it with a seriousness that they usually reserve for Hillary Clinton emails and questions about trans panic.
Yeah, absolutely. No, they really went to town. I mean, when the New York Times wants to let you know that something is serious, when there's something real here, they do that, and they did that here.
Yeah. And I think what you're going to see is a trickle-down effect to maybe less prominent media sources, but there will be podcasters discussing this. There will be people seeing bits of it on the evening news. Mm-hmm. There will be a filter. You'll get a lot of, we already have seen the late night comedians do it, but I think we're going to see even more comedy, even more memes. And that is how public opinion shifts.
Yeah, I mean, as you pointed out, the Times put it on the front page, and it was even above the fold. And now Trump's media allies are in a real bind. According to this Media Matters analysis, Fox News has barely mentioned these latest revelations at all. Now, that's pretty funny because at previous junctures, as Media Matters also documented, Fox figures have spent a fair amount of time claiming that Trump has been totally exonerated of everything Epstein related. So what do you make of that? Like, how does Fox work its way around this one?
I think the good news is that the MAGA and alternate media has shifted away from Fox as its absolute center. And there are a lot of these bro podcasts, which we know moved people, right? And bad news for the true believers is that this is a flashy story. This is a story about a sex trafficking ring. It has automatic interest in it. There is no way that Joe Rogan is not going to talk about this, that Theo Von is not going to talk about this. Any podcast that is consumed by some of these people that only have a tangential interest in politics, but they talk about the news, they're going to talk about the Epstein story. It is a fascinating example of a conspiracy theory that seems to have been proven correct. So this is what I'm talking about in how the most damaging thing about this story for MAGA is not that it splits MAGA, although you have, I know, some good examples about the ways that it is. It's that it chips away at it. It deepens a fault line that I already think existed again, I don't want to call it quite the base, in the people that voted for Trump, among the people that voted for Trump.
Yeah, and I think it's an important insight that you bring up, that Fox News really is much more of a propaganda organ for Donald Trump than maybe some of those bro podcasters are. And here's where it gets pretty crazy as well. Now Hillary Clinton enters the story. Republicans on the House Oversight Committee have her testifying behind closed doors today, Thursday. Not exactly clear why. Republicans are apparently grilling her about Epstein's involvement in the Clinton Global Initiative, but at the time she was a senator and not even involved in the organization. I'm unaware of any evidence that Hillary has even met Epstein. Anna, like, this is an amazing reach to haul Hillary in. Like, you've been covering this stuff for some time. Hillary is still their go-to target. Like, she lost to Trump 10 years ago. That's a decade. And that was her last big moment in public life. And oh, let's haul in Hillary. It's like, what?
It makes no sense to me, and it also points to a generational problem in the GOP. We're very aware, you and I, about a generational problem among the Democrats, right? That there's all these people that are stuck in the past and aren't responsive to what the issues and needs are of their constituents because they're thinking too much themselves about the Clinton era, right? They're stuck in the third way of thinking about politics. The thing is, and the good news is that the Republicans are trapped in the same place. They're still obsessed with Clintons. They're still obsessed with Obama. The people who they really need to reach and the people that they moved in 2024 to their side barely remember that. This is talking about ghosts. This is talking about the World War II. It's as distant to them as, let's say, 9/11. Right? I mean, they recognize perhaps that it's something that important that happened, but it's not relevant to them. And they don't think of the Clintons or Obama as the kind of big boogeymen that the GOP still does. The GOP is still fundraising off of fucking Hillary Clinton.
It's amazing. Like, I think you're talking about this kind of young man demographic that sort of haunts the Joe Rogan spaces and all that. These people were teenagers when Hillary lost to Trump.
That's right. And they were teenagers when Bill Clinton was another a butt of late night jokes, right? Like, they don't know really who he is besides some figure from the distant pop culture past, right? And I think that speaks to an important way that Democrats and leftists could interject themselves into this conversation. I worry that we're missing that opportunity because on the left, there are people still obsessed with the Clintons and Obama, too.
Yeah, well, that is certainly true. I just want to point out, just to make it even more ludicrous, like when Bill Clinton was president in his second term from 1996 to 2000, a lot of these young people hadn't even been born yet. And any of them that were born were, around 5, 6, 3, 4.
This is as relevant to them as the Macarena.
There's this weird twist here, too, with the Hillary thing. Hillary had wanted to testify publicly, but Republicans said no. And now MAGA podcaster Benny Johnson just posted a photo on social of her in the hearing. And MAGA Congresswoman Lauren Boebert elevated it, but that just served to undermine the case for keeping the hearing concealed in the first place. So for these MAGA figures, like a picture of Hillary getting grilled is enough to excite them, I guess. Like, how on earth is this going to actually work in distracting attention from these Trump revelations, these latest ones, which have so much force?
I don't think it can. It really does speak to a kind of Streisand effect, right? Like, as soon as you start trying to cover something up, people are going to get interested. And to me, one of the things that this tips its hand to is Benny Johnson is getting his orders from someplace else besides his own interests and the people who are listening. This is something that I don't think someone who is truly savvy about the people that are, coming up and the people that really need to be excited is going to do. Like, someone said, you need to post this, and he did. And I don't see how it forwards their argument at all. The idea that this is secret and we're going to keep it secret really belies like everything they've ever tried to argue about the Epstein files.
Yeah, and what's funny is that Hillary Clinton just jumped on this. Hillary Clinton said, if, well, you're going to post pictures of me, then let the reporters in to watch the hearing. It's just like they're just in total chaos, it seems to me. MAGA is.
Yeah, and I think they're in chaos and not seeing something I want people to really understand, which is the fracture exists below the top level, right? This is the group of people that moved to the Republican column in the last election. There's myriad reasons, but a lot of it, I think, had to do with upset, right? And a resistance to current regime or regime, I shouldn't say it that way. Resistance to things continuing in the same direction, upset about a sense of disconnection, an idea that there was some kind of unaccountability at the elites. And what the Epstein story does is plug directly into that narrative, even outside the specific horrific scandal that he represents. I think the number of Trump administration officials and Trump world people that are in these documents is proof that Trump is part of the problem, that these elites have no accountability. It doesn't, I want to be very clear about something, because I think this is true, and I wrote about this. The Epstein class, I think communicators need to be very clear, that does not mean everyone there was a pedophile. And the knowledge or lack of knowledge, knowledge or lack of participation in who Epstein was and what he was up to matters, of course. But even if they didn't know and didn't participate, it is a black mark against them that they were even in this circle. It represents a level of power, a level of unaccountability that I do think Americans are really mad about.
Well, I want to point out to your point there that MAGA, including the sort of the podcaster world and even some of the people around Trump, MAGA itself is quite split. MAGA elites are split over this whole thing right now, precisely because of what you're getting at, which is that it's actually sort of blowing up the myth that Trump and his people are somehow not part of the elite, right? Like, so MAGA personality Sean Ryan, for instance, has directly and quite angrily accused DOJ of covering up for pedophiles. Even Ben Shapiro pointed out that Steve Bannon is deeply implicated in the files. Several others have said that too, because Bannon, it turns out, advised Epstein. So it really wrecks a major MAGA storyline for Steve Bannon, who is the keeper of the MAGA flame, right? Like the originator of the MAGA voodoo, in a way. For him to be advising Epstein, I think really blows the whole idea of Trump and MAGA elites as being somehow different from these other elites. It really wrecks that story, don't you think?
Yes, I agree. And I think it points to something that should be heartening for those of us that are pinning our hopes on the midterms, which is that the MAGA coalition, while it is tough to crack in one way, because it is a cult, parts of it is resistant to logic. It was never actually that sturdy based on interests.
Meaning?
There are a lot of people who came into Trump world just because Trump seemed to be the winner and seemed to be the kingmaker, right? As soon as he weakens, I believe people are going to peel off. And he has been weaker and weaker and weaker. And to get down for a second, I do believe the only tool he really has left is violence and threats. But that is a brittle form of authority. And we've seen in Minnesota, like, it is not something it is something that can be resisted and something that is incredibly unpopular and can crumble.
Just to support your point there, nobody is more aware of that aspect of Trump's mystique than Trump himself. Like, he absolutely knows that winning is the thing that attracts people to him. And so you will note that when he loses, like when he lost before the Supreme Court, he immediately tried to flip it around by saying something like, we're going to investigate them. Now, that to some ears, that'll sound like, oh, just Trump being crazy Trump. But it's not Trump being, well, it is Trump being crazy Trump. But it's actually like there's a method there, which is that he always has to have his enemies on the run. He can never be the person who's being delivered a loss. He meets the losses out to others. And so this Epstein stuff, I think, is real trouble as well. That's why you see him going out and saying, I'm totally exonerated. Totally, right? I've got this. I'm owning it. The Trump mystique just deflates very rapidly when he loses.
Yes, and he is losing more and more and more. All of these special elections we're seeing, all of this resistance to data centers, to ICE detention centers. Like, this is a multiple prong attack, right? Epstein just represents one really important and really significant wing of this attack or method of this attack, and it needs to be exploited in part because I won't get tired of repeating, it represents a lot of other stuff, right? Like, embedded in the Epstein files, and this is the piece that I wrote most recently, are a lot of other ideas that are really corrosive. If you look at the people that Epstein wanted to surround himself with, their AI bros, their crypto bros, their wellness people, they're anti-vaxxers, they're eugenicists. Like, this is a really important point, that if we can use the Epstein class to puncture Trump's power, if we can make him seem a part of that, I think it contributes to this overall disintegration of his popularity, and that his popularity is all he has. It's weird almost, right? He has to appear to keep winning and winning and winning. And as soon as he starts to lose, he will lose people more and more. I believe there are going to be Republicans in Congress who try to save their own skin, and thank God they do.
This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I want to bring in this really big picture question. MAGA spent years screaming that there was a major cover-up going on with regard to Epstein, back when they thought the Epstein files contained dastardly secrets about elite liberals and Democrats. And now, incredibly, we have amazingly damning revelations about exactly that, a new dimension to the cover-up in which dozens of pages from the files are literally missing, and they involve a very, very powerful member of the elite, right? Donald Trump himself. And so I want to ask you about this going forward. Like, how does MAGA manage this? Because this doesn't go away, right? Like, if Democrats take the House this fall, and they're in power in 2027, big time subpoenas start flying on this stuff, they will try to get those missing files. By then, we may know of other revelations that are missing. The investigations suddenly take a big turn. It's no longer James Comer sitting in a dark room with Hillary Clinton and leaking photos of her. You know what I mean? How does MAGA deal with this over time? This was big to them. What do they do with it?
Well, I think I genuinely believe they're falling apart. I don't know if they have a way to deal with it. The interesting thing about cults, are you aware that this whole when prophecy fails study that people have recited for years about how a failure of prophecy really unites cultists, that's turned out to be disproven and falsifiable? We're not necessarily going to see people strengthening their beliefs in order to be able to continue to believe a thing that's been disproven or hasn't happened. I think that most people are not MAGA cultists. Most people who vote for Donald Trump are not MAGA cultists. And when they see the shit that's going to come out that you and I know is going to come out, they are going to be not even disillusioned. They're going to be disgusted. And I don't know if all of those votes are up for grabs for Democrats, but it means that the solidity is no longer there. I think that there is a possibility that there's going to be other folks that come in and try to sweep up those votes to the right. But who's that going to be? Can't be JD Vance. I don't know who on the right has the ability to come in and try to capitalize on the people that are disappointed with Trump but still don't want to vote for people on the more Democratic side of things.
Yeah,
they might be just lost. They might just go back to not participating, which is something that a lot of Trump voters used to just be outside of the political sphere.
Totally. Just to wrap this up, you could sort of see a twofer taking effect. One is more stuff about Trump related to Epstein, or more covering up, or some combination of that on one side. Then on the other, the fact that Trump is leaving public life and it's JD Vance, right? Those two things, I think, actually make the prospects for a major MAGA crack up much, much more likely. And Vance he doesn't have the charisma to keep it all together. Some of these MAGA figures are going to be staking their own claims and saying, okay, I'm going to say that I was one of the first to warn you about Trump way back when and Epstein, and that this will be ways for them to build their followings in the kind of post-Trump era. I think it falls apart potentially at that point. Where do you see it going?
I agree. And the only bad news is pretty bad news, which it is likely to get worse before it gets better. There are going to be desperate grabs for power. There is going to be attempts at violent repression. I'm sure you saw the news today about an attempt to perhaps declare an emergency over voting. But overall, we can look on the far horizon and it's good news, because that stuff is extremely unpopular. It will only hasten the peeling away of people and the growth of the movement on the left. And what I want to say to people is the way to get through the tough stuff is to do the activism that you can now, to band together as you can now. I think Minnesota proved that it can be resisted and you can grow community in the face of it. And so that's how we might get through the toughest times that are still ahead of us, is just to know that there are ways through it, that it doesn't have to be, we aren't going to be beaten by it. You can resist until it's over.
I think that's exactly right. And I think that's what's going to happen. Anna Marie Cox, really good to talk to you, folks. If you want to check out Anna's work, you can check it out up at tnr.com. She writes for us regularly. Anna, really nice to talk to you. Thanks so much for coming on.
Really good to catch up. Thank you, Greg.